You're listening to the Mother to Baby podcast, medications and more during pregnancy and breastfeeding. Ask the experts with your host, genetic counselor and mom of four, Chris Stallman.
This episode contains evidence-based information that's current as of the day recorded and may change as more data becomes available. To get the very latest information about this topic or other topics in pregnancy and breastfeeding, please contact a mother-to-baby specialist at 866-626-6847, by text at 855-999-3525, or through our website at mothertobaby.org. Welcome to another episode of the Mother to Baby podcast. My name is Chris Stallman, and I am a genetic counselor, a mother of four, and a teratogen information specialist. So what I do is I talk to people, patients, family members, healthcare providers, about exposures that can happen before pregnancy, during pregnancy, while breastfeeding, and in cases of adoption. And an exposure can be anything. So it could be a chemical that you work with. It could be a vaccine, a medication. It could be something from one of your hobbies, like painting, for example. And so today, we are going to talk with the Indiana Poison Center about some of the common questions that they get about exposures. And here to talk with us is Adam Overberg. He is a pharmacist, board-certified clinical toxicologist, and the director of the Indiana Poison Center. He is an alumnus of the University of North Carolina. He loves talking toxicology and poison center information with anyone who's listening, and he is a committed advocate of equity in healthcare education, practice, and research. Adam, we are thrilled to have you here. So, for our listeners who are tuning in, let's start with some basic information. So, what is a poison center?
A poison center is essentially a 24/7 confidential emergency hotline. Anyone can call to get information and medical advice about any suspected or confirmed exposure to any kind of substance.
If someone calls your poison center, who will they get on the phone? Do you have pharmacists, nurses, doctors? Who's answering the phones at your poison center?
The folks answering the phones are nurses and pharmacists, mostly, who have experience in medicine or critical care, and then also have specialized toxicology training and certification. And so those are the people actually answering the phones. All of them are veteran healthcare practitioners. In my center, almost all of them are also parents. So they definitely understand that things happen and kids are unpredictable. And that there's a lot of anxiety, especially with being a new parent. And so they are very warm and welcoming and are extremely non-judgmental.
That's so good to hear. And saying kids are unpredictable is an understatement, and I appreciate that. So thank you, because I can at least speak for my four, and yes, they are absolutely unpredictable.
My son is about to turn 3, and he is a tornado.
That sounds right on brand for all the 3-year-olds I know. So, so what kind of questions, generally speaking, does your poison center get?
Oh, we get all kinds of stuff. Among the more common ones, particularly from parents, are my kid ate some dirt out of a potted plant, or I found one of those desiccant packets in their mouth, or they bit into a Tide Pod or a laundry pod, or dishwasher detergent or something, or we were outside and they picked up a berry off the ground, and are they going to die? It's pretty much how the call goes. And very fortunately, the answer we almost always get to provide is no, absolutely not. They're going to be completely fine. But it really is more than just that. We take calls from both the general public as well as healthcare providers. So About 30% of our calls come from hospitals about patients who are either in the emergency department or in the ICU or just somewhere admitted to the hospital. But we get other things too, like snake and spider bites. People who are trying to do self-harm with prescription or non-prescription drugs. It could be something like they were cleaning their bathroom and they accidentally mixed cleaning products and the product formed a harmful gas. Sometimes it's the elderly saying, I took my partner's medication and what do I do? Or I took mine and then I forgot that I took it and then I took it again. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have things like there was a recent fire at a plastic recycling facility in Indiana, and it released a lot of soot and gases in the surrounding area. So we had a lot of calls asking, what kind of health effects should we be worried about? And we did a lot of work with the CDC and the state health department and the county health department to put together education and field those questions.
That definitely sounds like a wide range, and I got to be honest, I had no idea that Indiana had snakes. I'm in Arizona, so of course our poison center gets lots of calls about rattlesnake bites and scorpion stings and stuff like that. But I didn't know that it was similar in Indiana. So what kind of snakes do you guys have out there, or what kind of questions do you get about snake bites? I guess, like what kind of snakes?
I joke about this a lot because if you want interesting, Indiana is not really your place. Everything is pretty uninteresting. We do have a couple venomous snakes. We have the Eastern Massasauga. We have timber rattlesnakes, and then copperheads and cottonmouths. We handle maybe half a dozen calls a year of snake bite, and I always get a chuckle from my Arizona colleagues when they're like, we had 10,000 calls last year.
Yeah.
I can't relate.
Yeah, we do get quite a few, at least in Tucson for sure. So is that the most interesting question that's come into your poison center, or what would be the most interesting question that you've had experience with?
Oh, I get this question a lot, and I love it because there are just so many cool, crazy, one-off, wacky, out in left field cases that we get. One was actually fairly recently was a person who had been using a dental paste that contained large amounts of zinc oxide, and it actually caused her to develop a fairly severe copper deficiency to the point where she had to get intravenous copper.
Flipping to the other side, so more common things, things that we might encounter a little bit more every day. What I think about very often, if someone's like, what's one of the more common things you get questions about in pregnancy and breastfeeding, I definitely have to say vitamins. Because, people are supposed to take vitamins based on their recommendations from their healthcare providers, especially when planning pregnancy or during pregnancy. But for the Poison Center, for your Poison Center in particular, what kinds of questions do people ask you about vitamins?
Almost always it's whether they've taken too much. Whether it was, my kid found my gummy vitamins and ate the whole bottle, or, I heard that this vitamin could cause this effect if I take too much of it, and am I taking too much of it? Occasionally we get a question about whether some kind of anomalous effect or symptom that they're having or vague healing could be caused by a given product. And we usually don't have great answers for that. Kind of hard to say from over the phone. And then occasionally we'll get people asking if they should or should not take a given product. And that's really not something that we can provide advice on. That's for the obstetrician or for their regular pharmacist. We're more focused on poisoning than we are with therapeutic uses.
Yeah, it's the same for us. We're certainly not allowed to make product recommendations. We always tell them to check with their healthcare provider. But people do ask, is this one okay? Is there too much? So my question to you is there a particular vitamin that someone could take too much of? Like, I know when we think of, especially like gummy vitamins for kids, as long as it doesn't have iron and used as directed, we're not very concerned. But is there any particular vitamin that there can be too much of?
Short answer is yes, and it would always be yes. And the slightly longer answer is it depends.
Sure.
Everything that we do is tied up in how much was it, and how was it taken, and trying to get as much context as we can. But the take-home message is that toxicity from vitamins is extremely, extremely rare. It really has to be a massive amount or a really exceptional circumstance. The ones that jump most immediately to mind are vitamin A and vitamin C. Vitamin A, really not unless you're taking a high-dose supplement every single day or multiple times a day, or if you're eating polar bear liver. Vitamin C can cause like kidney stones and like crystals in the urine, but again, it has to be really high amounts.
Adam, I am not going to let you get away with just dropping if someone eats polar bear liver. And moving on, I need more, please. Can you spill that tea? Tell me about polar bear liver.
Polar bears concentrate an extremely large amount of vitamin A in their livers. It's part of their adaptation. They're not the only animal that does that. A lot of animals store high levels of vitamin A in their livers, but that is the most notable kind of exotic one.
That is absolutely notable. Today I learned. So thank you for that. So yeah, and again, it's very similar in that, there are upper limits, there are minimum requirements, but, we suggest that people who are pregnant, trying to get pregnant, breastfeeding, work with their healthcare provider to see what amount is right for them, because, you can also have it in other substances. Of course, people take vitamins, but there's also, vitamins in food and stuff like that. So moderation always is our watchword. But what happens if anyone, so like a child ingests something they shouldn't, someone has an accidental ingestion, or, there's too much of something, what would you suggest that people do if something like that were to occur?
It's a great question, and appreciate it. So the first thing is if they're having seizures or they're not breathing or not responding, call 911. That's the most critical thing to do. Short of that, call the poison center. It's free, it's confidential. You don't even have to give us your name if you don't want to. And my advice to people who might call the poison center is have as much information available to you as possible. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We may be asking questions when you just want answers, but we're trying to figure out what exactly happened and how concerned we and you need to be. So if possible, having the substance, drug, or the product, how much may have been ingested or maybe on the skin or inhaled, what the active ingredients are, and then also things like, have you done anything for the patient already? Like, have you given them any water? Have they had any vomiting or any other symptoms, any drowsiness? And it really is helpful if you can physically lay eyes on them, and if they're old enough to answer questions, if you're able to ask the patient themselves, how do you feel? The initial recommendation standpoint, the most important thing is don't make them vomit. We hear every day, I try to stick my finger down their throat and make them throw up, and please don't do that.
Noted. No, and I'm so glad that you mentioned, ask them if possible. Like, obviously, you're not going to ask the infant, but yeah, if there is someone who can communicate that to you, what an excellent point, to ask them, how are you feeling? Or, if something had happened, if they went into the next room, did they vomit on their own or something like that? What a good thing to remember. And the thing is too, of course, firsthand, it's scary and people are scared, take a breath, right? Poison Center's there to help. Like you said, free, confidential. My assumption is that your poison center, like all the poison centers, are there 24/7, 365. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Awesome. And thank you again for that. So yeah, they're there and they've heard it. That's the other thing. The head of our poison center, Steve Dudley, always says, we've heard it before. And like you said, your folks they're nice people. They're non-judgmental. Exactly. Many are parents, they've heard it. They've seen it.
We've already heard it today. Probably multiple times.
Even better.
They're not going to really throw anything at us that we haven't heard before.
Especially today. That's also excellent to remember.
Yeah. And really, it's like to normalize that even further. We get more than 50,000 cases a year.
Oh my gosh.
Or thereabouts.
Wow.
Every year. And as recently as 10 years ago, that was closer to 80,000, 90,000 cases a year.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's hundreds of cases a day, potentially. Really, truly, there is no reason not to call. And while I'm talking about the initial recommendations for those younger children and infants, things that we might ask for are like, are they having any more drooling than normal? Because, my kid's a faucet, but, if he's, having so much more than normal, or if they're fussy and they don't want to eat or drink,
sure.
Those are more of the warning signs. Or if they're sleepy when they're not normally sleepy.
And that's why it's so helpful to have that information there. So, because like you said, you personally can't lay eyes on them. But if someone's there, it's like, okay, how old is your baby? How much does your baby weigh? What's typical for your baby? Really good reminder to just sort of keep that information in mind. Adam, before we let you go, what final thought would you like to leave our audience with? And when people need a poison center, because it's not an if in most cases. I must say I myself have called poison centers several times in the last few decades for my kids and for myself. But when folks need to contact the poison center, how can they do that?
By phone, call 800-222-1222. And every poison center has stocks of stickers and magnets that you can request for free, that you can put up by your phone or put around the house. Most have wallet cards that you can keep on your person, provide to babysitters, whatever. And beyond just your own house, I would say any house or any residence or your place where the child is going to spend any significant amount of time, grandma and grandpa's house, or aunt and uncle, or whomever, really, friends. Make sure that they know also that the poison center exists, that they have the number. Save it in your phone. Just do it now.
Yes.
And I think the other take home for me is poison centers are for all ages, not just kids. Mm-hmm. We may get the most calls about kids, but certainly that should not steer anyone away from calling.
Agreed. When my kids started our current daycare, I made sure that they knew, which they did. They were absolutely on top of it, but I did come armed with my poison center refrigerator magnets, because I love a good refrigerator magnet. And I said, hey, just in case you don't know. And they're like, nope, we do. And they had a whole collection. So yeah, any place. And you're absolutely right. It's not just for kids. I've called for adults as well. So Adam, thank you so much for being with us here today, but also thank you for the work that you and your colleagues do at the Indiana Poison Center. Thank you to all the poison centers out there, which are a great free and confidential resource.
It's a pleasure talking with you.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Mother to Baby podcast. If you have an idea for the show, we would love to hear from you. So feel free to email us at contactus@mothertobaby.org. Be sure to subscribe to the Mother to Baby podcast. That way you never miss a new episode. And you can also go back and listen to previous episodes as well. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, or however you listen to podcasts. And remember that Mother to Baby is here to answer your questions about exposures. You can reach us by phone at 866-626-6847, by text at 855-999-3525. You can visit us on our website, which is mothertobaby.org. There, you can chat with us. You can email us. You can look through our many, many fact sheets, which are free. You can listen to the podcast. You can also find information about our pregnancy studies and how you can get involved. So until next time, remember, Mother to Baby is here for you. Take care.
Mother to Baby is a service of the nonprofit organization of Teratology Information Specialists and supported by the Health Resources and Service Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It's made possible through generous donations from listeners like you. To learn more about Mother to Baby, please visit mothertobaby.org.